There we go. Well, we are back for another Friday night chat. And when we left the stage on last Friday night, there were some things placed on the table. So we must go back and make sure that we pick those things up and we handle our business. So, with that being said, um, let's get into it. Let's get into it. Let's get into it. Mr. Jamal, how are you, sir, this evening?
I'm doing well, doing very well, and heightened anticipation for this conversation. Yeah.
I tell you what, I'm gonna double record this because I want to make sure if there's anything I need to grab, that I can grab it. So yeah, so last session, last Friday night on Friday night chat, we had a good conversation that stemmed from a previous episode, and just talking about relationships and how um the trauma and the things that we deal with and how it sets the tone for you know other relationships, what we deal with, what we accept, all of this. And we've had a couple of conversations now about it. But one of the things that we kind of, you threw out at the end of the conversation on Friday night, was this whole family, the family relationships. Um, One of our participants had a question about, well, to me specifically, about my children resenting me, um, for having to be in church all the time, and how they grew up and that kind of thing. And so, and did they resent me for that? And so you went on, parenthetically, to insert, after my response, that it didn't matter whether or not, that they were resented or not, because this was a part of the structure of the home and teaching and rearing them. Um, and so that just led to a couple other things that you threw out about how, family should be the first ministry. And that's where our dedication and our focus should be. And that's a relationship that oftentimes is not the focus. And we're focusing on so many things outside the home. Even the parents aren't focusing on each other. And so when the parents don't focus on each other, that relationship weakens. And therefore the structure of the home and the family weakens over time. And so once the children are gone, what are you left with? Um, and that just opens, that opens up a lot. I know a lot of different directions I could go with that, because, when that
Absolutely.
structure is not set in order and set in place, here again, there's certain things that the children are not taught, or they're taught something indirectly, right?
Mhm.
And then as the husband wife, mom and dad relationship, either we are being, real vague about how we present that before our children, or we're not nurturing it at all.
Mhm.
So you had some expressions about that. So I'm gonna let you kick it off from your perspective.
Yeah. And of course, my mind is spider webbing right now. Um, but you really think about, I thought that question was interesting. Like, what if your children, hate you for bringing them to church? And, you know, how would they get to the level of hating in the first place? But that could go down a different rabbit hole. But I'll use the example of uh, my mom whooped my tail constantly, right? I was a bad kid. I wasn't a bad kid. Like, again, we talked about, like, I asked some questions and I said some stuff that in my
You're
culture you
curious.
just don't do,
Yeah.
right? My
That
brain, I
curiosity
ask
got you in
questions,
trouble.
right? And what's interesting is nobody likes whoopings. I wasn't like, thank you, mom, for whooping
Right.
me. But that all those whoopings created something. There was an understanding that there are repercussions for actions. One of the
Absolutely.
things we see today, this is why kids are shooting up schools, because there are
Hmm.
no repercussions. So they don't,
Absolutely.
there's no fear, right?
Hmm.
I was terrified in the islands when my mom came to school, like the word would spread like, yo, Miss Bazil is here. And man, people will be in class sitting up straight like never before. Because in the islands, anybody's parents can tag anybody's kids if they're acting out, right? And so it doesn't matter if your kids like you. You're not supposed to be their friend. You're supposed to be their guide through
Right.
this life. You're supposed to be teaching
Absolutely.
them, one, about God, right? And my mom's
Mm-hmm.
favorite scripture in the Bible when we were growing up was
Absolutely.
spare not the rod and spoil the child, right? Like
It's for
you
the child, right? That's it. Beat them, they won't die.
they ain't gonna die, right? So we are so
Beat them, they won't die.
concerned with our kids liking us and what other people think. And none of those people matter. That's the reality. You have a
And what
responsibility.
society and the culture, what society and the culture has
Yes.
now implemented and injected into the family structure and how people raise their children.
And we just ascribe to a society that is obviously wayward, but we listening
Hmm.
to them. And oh
Right,
my gosh, I want to
right.
get into this. I'm gonna wait for a little bit later. It's in my brain. But it's like, you know, we have these concepts that doesn't exist in the Bible at all, right? And it's
Hmm.
like God never
Yeah.
said, God said, children, Ephesians 6, right? Um, you have to honor your parents because that can affect your life,
Hmm.
the longevity of your life.
Absolutely. That your
It
days
never
may be long, right?
it never said parents, hey, make sure you're cool with your kids and they love you. Like, no.
Right, right. Absolutely. That part.
And we our relationships are skewed, right? We so
Hmm.
I've seen it. I've dealt with kids for a long time, especially in the confines of like my church and I mentor and all that stuff. I've seen where parents spend so much time investing in their kids' birthdays and we're gonna be at
Hmm.
every game and the question that's always blaring in my head: Dad will take the son here, mom will take the girls there. Are y'all spending time
Hmm.
with each other? Are you that invested in the passions of your spouse? Your spouse wants to be
Hmm.
a comedian. Are you that supportive? Yeah, okay, he or she goes to work and does all that stuff, but in their heart, I want to teach in some capacity. Are you supporting? Are you staying up late to help
Hmm.
them?
Right.
We invest in these kids that when once they get older, they gone. They ready for college. They're ready to go experience the world. And then you left with this shell of a person that you never support.
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
got it backwards. And
Yep.
I think the church reinforces that. Unfortunately, we reinforce it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
you can make more children. I always say it. You can make more babies.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have it so backwards. Um, and the kids can see when you're disconnected from your spouse.
Absolutely. They can.
Children are they don't know that they're seeing it, but they're seeing it. And they're
Hmm.
learning this is the right behavior.
Yeah, and they don't know exactly what the ins and outs are necessarily, but they know that something is not correct. And to the point, and one of the things, when I was coming up, they said this then, and I still say it now. My kids are grown and they know there's just certain levels of respect, certain things you talk about it in your own house, but when you're in my house or when you're around me, there's certain things that you're just gonna respect when you're around me. But if it was good enough, for us, it's good enough for y'all. And
Yeah.
and the old saying, from a scriptural perspective, is relates to, living for the Lord and living for God and allowing your walk to be, you know, um, enveloped with the word of God. And that's what you exemplify. If it was good for Paul and
Yeah.
Silas, it's good enough for me. And so giving children a role model, an example to the best of our ability is our job as parents. And to teach them discipline, to teach them respect, to teach them to reverence. When you talk and when not to talk. My baby son was a curious child, so I understand that he got a lot of whoopings too. Because there's a time that you injected your what you need to say or want to say, and there's a time you refrain from doing so, especially if it's rude and it's at a time that you should not be talking or speaking, or if the person is not talking to you. And you can have an opinion, but have an opinion at the right time. And so teaching that discipline. And so while he was a challenge as a young child, he has a different level of respect and raises his daughter the same way. And so it lets me know that what we were doing, or what I was, because I was more of the disciplinarian, it wasn't in vain. Because at the end of the day, you got to have something to draw on. And that's what we're seeing in this day and time. Because as the generations continue to be born and grow, they're watering down that process. They're getting away from it. We're allowing iPhones and iPads and tablets and YouTube and everything to teach our children, because we're not taking the time to do it because we're so quote unquote busy. So we're not taking time to sit down and show them how to write, teach them how to read. We're sending them to Gracie's Corner, and we're sending them
Yeah.
to it's a couple of other, even the babies, they're not even walking, but they know how to use these devices, right? So we think if we keep them occupied with that, they'll learn their ABCs.
So
Yeah,
we can
they're
go
being,
in,
yeah, but they're not going to be taught how to write, how, all of this. So while they are smart and inquisitive, there's a piece that's still missing, because so many of our young people, even today, I come across this all the time. The common sense is not there
yeah,
because they've not been taught the basic elements of life. And it's really, it's disheartening,
yeah,
because
it is.
it's like, this is a time, their early years, that's the time that you envelop those teachings, and you make sure that they know who they are
Yeah.
and what's important, that they have a spiritual foundation, they have a structure, that they know who God is, and they understand what it means to be a child of God, and the fact that they're precious in his sight, and that he loves them. All of this is important for the purpose of a relationship. It's all
And
about relationship.
it establishes the relationship with themselves first, right? You need to know who you are. You need to know that you are perfectly and
Yes.
wonderfully made. And
Yes.
so what's interesting to me, right? You said something. Oh my Lord, where'd it go? It was just right there. Um, just the establishment of the spiritual aspect of this. And it made me think about parenting. Our example should always be, is always God.
Mm-hmm.
God is our Father. Now, does God walk closely with us, or does he sit us down in front of the TV, sit us down in front of life and just walk
Mm-hmm.
away?
Mm-hmm.
So we should be modeling God. I'm not saying you need to control and hover, but
Mm-hmm.
there has to be intentionality with children, because no matter what children are learning,
Mm-hmm.
you have to decide what you want your children to learn.
Yeah.
That's up to you. And I don't know if we are, and people are probably like, this dude talking and he ain't got no kids. But I see your kids
Mm-hmm.
and I'm like, ugh, I don't know if that's, the concept of, imagine if God gave us everything we want.
Mm-hmm.
You know how jacked up we would be?
Oh my goodness.
So why is your kid wearing $400 shoes and everything they could ever want, you give them? That's unhealthy.
Absolutely. And here's the thing. It's often the argument, my children, my money, I do what I want to do. And yes, you can.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, when it gets to a point where they don't hear you, when they don't respect you, they no longer reverence you, and they expect you to give them when you do not have it, because every season doesn't last forever. And so you may be in a season that you can give it to them now, or you may be in a season, from a perspective, socially or whatever, that you're cool with that. But there's going to come a time that all of that's going to shift. The seasons will shift. The season will shift for you. The seasons will shift for the child. But if you maintain a level of respect and reverence and discipline on a consistent basis, the seasons never change, because there's always this level of going back and understanding, well, I was able to get it, but I had to do this to get, because there is a level of appreciation and gratitude that comes with it. And so you have to teach children, even when they're young, if you want a snack, you got to go clean up your toys, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to leave these toys in the floor at a year old, because they understand.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to go pick them toys up. You're gonna put them where they're supposed to go. Then you can get a snack, but not before then, because there has to be a check and balance. And it's even with us as adults. When we don't have a check and balance, we get ourselves in trouble.
Absolutely. And
We get ourselves in trouble. And so it's the same way
yeah.
with, our families and things of that nature. And if you want that structure, you have to establish it. It just doesn't happen. You have to
So,
teach it. You have to train it, and then it becomes a system by which you live. So that don't happen by osmosis. You have to
and
participate in that process.
even before the kids,
Oh,
how
of
many of
course.
us, how many of us cheat on our spouses with our jobs?
Mhm.
Um,
Both
you,
sides.
I mean,
Both sides.
you bend over backwards. Oh no, I gotta go in early because we have this project. Oh no, the boss asked me to stay late and da 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 da. And you had something planned with the wife or the husband, and you will brush that off so easily. So then I ask you again, like, where's your bait? What is your focus? What is your first
Mm-hmm.
ministry? You're telling me that your job is more important than this person. Do you evoke the same sort of effort? Wife birthday comes or husband birthday. Oh, let me go on the husband. So your
Yeah.
husband's birthday come, Father's Day come, and you get him a tie.
Mm-hmm.
What? I wish somebody, I wish somebody would come up to me with a tie. I rather, what? Man, I will be very vocal that day. You know, I'd rather take the time, take the effort, take the energy, pay attention. Um, Work isn't the
Yep.
most important thing. Making money to live this life. Oh, this is the way I want to live. And that's the problem. We are so distracted with the way we want to live. We're
Mm-hmm.
not feeding that spiritual side of how we should live.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it starts even before the kids come when you are chasing this career, right? Your career, it doesn't define you.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
It
But
can't.
that's what we allow, because that's where we find. And for some of us, it's on either side. It can be on the
Mhm.
man's side, it can be on the woman's side. That's where we find the attention. That's
Yeah.
where we get the celebration, right? That's where we get the pat on the back. That's where we're embraced. And so that's what we run to. And so rather than taking the opportunity to have a conversation relationally, this is what I need at home. This is what this is my love language. Or then we resort to those things, and then the next thing you know, those things have pulled us all the way in,
Yeah.
because we failed to have a conversation, because the structure of families have not, especially for our Black culture, has not come from that place of attention, affection, and spending time, quality time. It's
Oh,
all
duty,
about providing.
duty. This is
Yeah.
your, you should. This is
So
your,
it's not due benevolence. It's
mm.
a duty to make sure the bills are paid. Due benevolence is something totally different,
So
you
I
know.
always go back to that word, service. This thing is all about service. And
Mm-hmm.
now it gets scary too, right? Because if I'm the only one serving my wife and
Yeah.
she's not serving me, it can deplete me.
Yep.
It can
Absolutely.
make me feel unloved,
Oh, it
all this
will.
stuff.
It will
So,
deplete you.
and so it's a scary thing. 100% service.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it should be like if I'm married to you, I have to give 100% service to you. If I hold back 20%, that's not
Yep.
okay.
It's not. And that's good, bad, and indifferent.
All of it,
We can't just give metrics to what's good,
right?
because we're imperfect people. We're imperfect beings. So we can't just measure what's good. We have to measure what's not good, what's imperfect, what's flawed, right? What
Mhm.
needs improvement, what needs to be caressed, what needs to be talked about, what needs to be dealt with. All of that, you know, has a key performance, measurement. And so we oftentimes just, give kudos, or we talk about the things that go well, but we don't talk about how to
Listen,
improve the things that we have a deficit in, right?
I put it out there. I don't even know how many podcasts ago at this point. Um, on one of these podcasts, like one of the greatest, and it's in the book, one of the greatest things that I learned from my ex was that when we dated, I was critical because based on what I've learned and the things I've experienced, there was this projection of, hey, I know for a doubt this is where we should be, and this is how we should be pursuing God or pursuing whatever.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until later, I mean, years later, it was like, hey, it clicked. Like, dude, you can't hold somebody to a standard God has revealed to you. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
And I don't know if she didn't know the words at the time or
Hmm.
whatever, but man, that would have been so much more beneficial in the moment if that was expressed to me, because a lot of times you can't see what you're doing because in your mind, this is the way, this is who I am, this is how I am. And so
Hmm.
a lot of times we don't have those conversations, right? It's
Yep.
like if your husband or your wife, you feel like they're working too much,
Say
them a
something.
nice little dinner, be like, hey, we need to talk. I made you your
Yeah.
favorite meal. Yeah, you working a whole lot and I feel neglected.
Yeah. Or ask the question, can you talk to me about why you've been
Why?
working so much? You know,
Hmm?
so that we don't come off that we're being accusatory, because
Hmm.
here again, I know I've been there, and we jump to what it is that we are having feelings about, what our emotions
Hmm.
about, and we don't take the
It becomes about
opportunity,
us.
yeah. So definitely we want to make sure that when we approach the conversation, that we approach the conversation with, I was just curious as to, you've been working a lot, can we talk about what's happening? You know, and so that's the opportunity to determine if overtime is just being taken and they feel like, they need to do it based on the financial situation, or, because that may be an opportunity to say, well, hey, I can do this and we can balance it
We
out so
got
we can
right.
have
Some time
Friday,
together. Yeah.
we can have Friday, for ourselves, or we can have Saturday or Sunday or whatever the case may be. But when you get to a point that every day is consumed with something, and I know for me, I've always been a very diligent worker. I'm very loyal
Mhm.
to anything I say I'm going to do, and at all costs, I'm going to make sure I get it done. So once I
Mhm.
had done, dinner, take care of the kids or something like that, then I might would go and, start to work on something for an hour or so before laying down. Well, there were times, my ex had to say, okay, that's enough work for today, right? You know,
And
that's
and
enough
you
work for, and I needed that. So I needed
yeah,
you to be able to tell me that, because on the flip side, I knew that I made a commitment to something. So I'm trying to
right.
complete that. But on the other side, you're saying, I understand, but you made a
Mhm.
lifelong commitment to me. And so
Right.
I need your time. And I need, if it ain't never just to lay here and watch television, then I want to do that.
You
And
know,
so,
mm, that balance piece. I like that.
yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing, you have to know yourself. This is the other thing. Self-awareness is so very important. But once we obtain self-awareness, once we gain it and we understand and we're aware of us, then we have to be intentional about
Right.
how we peruse ourselves through the next waves of life, so
Right.
that we can take action, intentionally take action on what we're aware of, because that's important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's
I
important.
um I think and I've had some friends come to me here recently because I've been making, we talked about dropping weight. I've been dropping some weight. And one of the
Hmm.
things for me has been, I'm a single guy, so like I'll be at work just doing my thing, having a good
Yeah.
time. Because I love what I do.
Yeah.
Uh, and then I was realizing, like, I went some months where I was eating out, which is not normal for me because I cook, but you can't cook if you're not home. Or you get home, you're so
Well, that's
tired,
true.
like you can't, you know what I'm saying? You don't have the energy. I was missing the little things, drawing, writing, and all that stuff. It's like, wait a second.
Hmm.
My purpose isn't my job. My job is a tool, a venue where I can utilize my purpose and my gifting, right? So I need to constantly be feeding my purpose. When you get married, it gets a little bit more complicated. I referenced
Yeah.
this before where Paul talked about it is better to remain single to do the
Mm-hmm.
work of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But if you do get married, you
Mm-hmm.
still have to manage. So here's another, before your spouse, God comes. How much time are you spending with God?
Right. Absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
and that's one on one, you and God. And then you also have to consider how much time are me and my spouse spending with God together. Like it creates, there's more, you have to divvy up your time all the more. And you have to
You
be so
have
much
to.
more intentional when you start talking about relationship and marriage, right? I have
Mm-hmm.
to be very concerned with my purpose. Am I being a good steward of the talents
Yeah.
God has given me? Or am I just working and
Yeah.
not utilizing the talents he's given me? But I also have to be aware, especially as a man, of the
Mm-hmm.
purpose God put in my wife. And am I enabling her to fulfill and grow and pursue those passions that are within her? Because if you stifle that, you with a robot, she gonna be dead. She won't be fulfilled. She won't be.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's so much in the balancing. And the more I
It
think of,
is.
like,
Well,
yo,
this is the book that I wrote over 10 years ago, Broken Relationships of a Leader. And I'm thinking about doing a sequel to it, but it says when the imbalance between spiritual and natural relationships become unhealthy. And there's this one excerpt, and I'll probably share a couple since we own this TIFF. And so I
let's
think
do
this
it.
is a road we can stay on for a minute. Ministry leaders oftentimes are the masters of masking our true identities. Broken Relationships of a Leader is an in season, thought provoking, real life look into everyday ministry life that every man and woman should read. It is a powerful tool that every ministry leader or anyone desiring to work in ministry should have in their library as a resource. This book explores how experiencing brokenness is not the problem, however, remaining broken is.
Mm.
Because we do it all the time. We do it all the time in ministry. You know, we start broken, we stay broken, we develop broken, and
Yeah.
we never address the things that we need to address as ministry leaders.
Mm.
I'm gonna share the so we had the first chapter is there's no competition, we are one. Oftentimes when we are in ministry, here again, these are conversations we have to have because, and this is something I experienced, it may not be with someone else, but to the point you were just talking about, understanding what your wife possesses, what she's anointed to do, what she's gifted to do, and appreciating that. Likewise for the woman, the same for her husband, and understanding that when God blesses, does anything, opens a door, anoints, lifts, whatever, that's not just for the husband or the wife, it's for both
Right.
of you because you're one. Um, can you handle my honesty? Yeah, I'm gonna have to get you a copy of this because this is the thing that we deal with in marriages because here's the favorite question, what's wrong?
Mm.
So sometimes that question is answered with nothing because when I tell you honestly what's wrong, you don't handle it or
Yeah.
can't handle it, right? So can you handle my honesty? So that's chapter 2. Then chapter 3 is can we communicate openly?
Mm.
You communicate, but can you communicate openly? I mean, can you really be raw about your feelings? Because even in marriages, we mask. We don't
Mm.
just mask to the public, but we mask
That's to each
the
other. Yeah.
yeah to each other. And so there are things that you may be dealing with that you don't want to be vulnerable about, and I can't address it or be empathetic to it because I don't even know that this is something that's bothering you or it's something that you've experienced, right?
Isn't that like a trusted? I have so many questions
Oh my
right now.
God, it goes so deep. It goes so
So
deep. It goes
so
deep. I'm telling you, it goes really, really deep. And
let me ask you
you
this,
know, go ahead.
because you were in this position. This is something I've observed, and I haven't really said anything about it. It's in my mind. It's like, should I write something? Is this just a fleeting thought? Uh, I look at pastors, right? And I've had people come up to me when I presented in some form or fashion, like, man, boy, I think you anointed to preach. And I'm like, you're wrong. Absolutely wrong. So I think in my mind, I'm not a pastor. I know some pastors, but I never asked this question. People assume a pastor's in the word, delivering the word, that that's their time with God. And I think that's incorrect. I think a pastor still needs time where I'm not reading or researching for a sermon. It's for my growth, my personal development. It's for me. And I always wonder, do pastors differentiate their times between this is preparation for a sermon or a lesson, and this is for me seeking food to nourish and uh, um, to feed myself after pouring out so much? Because you mentioned being did you say broken? Here's
Yeah.
what's interesting. If you're
You're
pouring
leading,
out,
but you're broken. You're
if
pouring out, but you're broken.
if you're pouring out and you're broken, that means you're leaking too. So that's a
Absolutely.
problem. Like,
Absolutely. So
like
you
what are we
are,
doing
here's
here?
the thing. So there's, oh my God. Oh my God. So there's such an oxymoron to this, right?
Oh, can I pause
So,
you real quick?
go
So
ahead.
I'm sorry, I just nerded out. So the interesting thing about any container when you're pouring, the volume of the water, the weight of the substance of whatever, it helps it to pour. So like
Uh-huh.
if you can imagine a jug, I have my
Uh-huh.
little,
Uh-huh.
call it my king cup. If I can imagine this and I'm pouring
Yeah.
out, right?
Yeah.
Gravity, the water itself is pushing itself out. But if I have a
Mm-hmm.
hole back here, eventually there will not be enough weight or water to pour out. It'll start draining out. So what's coming out of here is
Mm-hmm.
nonsense.
Yeah.
It's
And it's a
warped,
slow
it's
drip. It's
twisted,
a slow
and
drip
it's just
because it's a slow drip. There's no longer a flow. So when you hear people
disjointed.
sometimes
Oh,
and when you often hear people and I was just realistic about my experience. Um, I had to try to maintain a flow while being broken. I mean, literally going through the process of brokenness. Um, and it was one of the most difficult things. Did I manage to perform and fulfill the role? Absolutely. But did I win personally? Absolutely not. Because I didn't have enough support to help me with, you know what I'm saying? So it's different if I'm ministering broken, but I got a cast on,
mm, yeah,
right? Or if I have a sling, something to give me that support
for
so that in the
mm,
event that I bump into something or I accident, it doesn't totally dismangle,
yeah, yeah,
where I'm broken and I don't fall back
mm,
apart, but I have something to support me there. So it covers me. That was the part that, because there was so much that I could not deal with. And one of them was because of my children. They were young, and there were just certain
mm,
things that I refused to really deal with openly and publicly while I was
mm,
going through publicly.
right.
So it was a whole lot to it. And so that whole yeah, so it's a whole lot. So and this is a book we may just need to canvas and go through. So I'm gonna have to make sure you get a copy.
Is that available on your website, ma'am?
It's available on my website and on
I'm gonna check
Amazon.
that out. I'm gonna go check
And
that out.
then the next chapter we have is a natural side. Then we have the spiritual front, because I just talk about it. We're helping other people, and while we're at home struggling, they got their feet up. But we're worried about what Mr. Watermelon and what Sister Sweet Potato said, how they feel about. I could care less. Because that's the reality. And then the last chapter is the reality that we live.
The
And
spiritual.
so there's so many things that I go into
I'm
in
stuck
this.
on the spiritual front part.
Yeah.
Like, in essence, you're deceiving yourselves,
Hmm.
and there's no greater deceit than
Yeah.
self-deception.
Yeah. The spiritual front. And we really think that we are we're really doing it. And so of course for each of these there is a self-evaluation. Um, that I have, and I was just telling my daughter this not long ago, that I think I wanted to either do a sequel or to represent this book, because it's still a seller. And when especially when I go and I'm in pastor and wives environments, they're intrigued by it. Because it's like, what, broken relationships of a leader, because there's
So
so many relationships of leaders that are broken, that have been broken, and that continue to be broken, or they're afraid. They're so close to being broken. It's just like, if you
yeah,
press one more
just
time,
a little bit, just a little bit, a little
just a
bit of
little bit.
wind. So this is the thing. I would like to say, like, this isn't just for pastors, church leaders. This is for every and anybody.
Oh,
Because if you
absolutely.
claim to be a Christian, guess what? You're a
Hmm.
minister. Whether you go through training or not, you are a minister. And
Oh,
all
absolutely.
of these things apply.
Absolutely.
I do believe that there needs to be a level of honesty and transparency, especially if you are ministering to people.
Hmm.
I'm not saying put your business out there,
Yeah.
but the transparency and the honesty comes into play, excuse me, when it's like, right now I'm dealing with some stuff. So
Hmm.
I don't need to be going and engaging anybody because I need to work through this. And even Jesus stole away, right? Like,
Oh, yeah.
so take some times, when you're not right. You got to be
Yep.
honest with yourself and take some time to steal away. I would argue, um, I, again, I'm not married, but if I'm married, if me as a man, if I'm off, my wife is off.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely, without a doubt. That's where the spiritual front comes in. Let me share this excerpt. That's so good. So this is chapter 5 of Broken Relationships of a Leader, and this is an excerpt from chapter 5, the spiritual front. The spiritual front incarcerates so many of our church leaders. It is simply amazing to me, the place where we are to get instructions to help and aid us in our spiritual walk. In many cases, is the place where we experience the most hurt and pain. As a people, we allow society to place us upon a pedestal. Likewise, we allow society to place us, to tell us that we must live this picture perfect life without a spot or blemish. As a result, people fall into that belief because of the notoriety and the fame, which
Mhm.
results from having a position of influence in their life. We then position ourselves to have people draw from us that which we ultimately do not have for them to draw from. That's that whole leaking, pouring, flowing piece we just talked about. Once
Mhm.
we are depleted of our inner person or natural ability to love and care for others, we have nothing left for which to love those who are closest to us. That front has has affected so many pastors, so many families, so many children of pastors, which is why I was determined to have a different direction and a different way of handling things with my children, because I just seen so many different things.
You get
Um,
so caught up in, you're right,
yeah,
man. You get caught up in that. This is what
yeah,
this is God's work.
it's a whirlwind. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's why I'm not called to be nobody's pastor.
Yeah,
But at some point, I'm gonna be called to be somebody's husband. The same thing
yeah,
applies there. And
yep.
this I went into, man, some other thoughts on it, but I don't think this is the right venue for this. I think this topic would be best in sort of like a panel discussion with
Mm-hmm.
men and women. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I have a tactic that I use, of course, I'm sure you're aware, where I say some stuff that'll really like rub people a little bit off. And I was talking to a friend of mine. I was talking to Mo about, she's very successful woman in her
Mm-hmm.
career. And it's like, we talked about, okay, now we're gonna have these kids. Like,
Mm-hmm.
somebody gotta, these kids need to be connected to me, not the daycare. So
Right.
you have to
That
take
part.
time.
Mm-hmm.
right? So who's gonna, and it's like, well, if this woman is, your wife is doing well in her career, she's making more money, and I, in my mind, I was like, there is some things I cannot do. There's a
Mm-hmm.
connection that a mother has with a child that a father can never have, especially in those beginning stages. I understand your career and all that, but we're gonna have to work something out because I need you here. And then, I had this whole made up conversation in my head, like, well, I don't want to mess up my promotion, or I make more money. And so the question for me always goes back to, is your security in the money,
Right.
or is this, is God where we have our trust and our faith in it? Right. And
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, now, of course, I'm not saying I have this unilateral decision making power, but these are the type of things like you really need to talk about, because the
Absolutely.
default nowadays is, oh, put the kid in daycare. You got a 3 month old in daycare. Who is that baby bonding with and connecting
Right.
to?
Absolutely.
That babysitter,
Absolutely.
that nanny, grandma. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
grandma. I love you, but it's my child.
Right.
Right? And I want that connection. We are willing to sacrifice all of that
Mm-hmm.
for a career?
Yep. And
That's
that's why it's so
backwards.
important. It's so important to, when you are dating someone, especially if you are young. Oh my God. Um, my 25-year-old self would say something totally different in this season. Yeah, you want to have a nice home, you want to have nice cars, da 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 da. But you also need that child to be reared and taught and nurtured and given the best of yourself in those early stages of life. Whether you are breastfeeding or not, as a woman, a mother, it doesn't matter. That child needs you in those early stages. It needs the father in those early stages. So you don't have a baby do skin to skin with just the mother, but they do skin
Right.
to skin with the father because they need to bond with the father. And especially for all children, there is something about the presence of the father, just like because God has so designed this institution of marriage to him and the church,
Yes.
there is something special and specific about the presence of the Father
I just thought of something. Yes.
that makes such a difference in the life of a child. The presence of a father to caress that child, to kiss that child, to hold that child, the strength of a
Reinforce,
father.
encourage. Yes.
It's
Yes.
it's it's necessary, right? To be that strength to the wife, to the mother, to
Yeah.
say, baby, get some rest. I got it from
I
here.
got you. Right. So
You
it's
know,
interesting.
and let her replenish her body. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just we are missing. If I had to go back, I'm telling you, I would live a much different life as far as things were concerned. To have that right there, to have that to the 10th power, to be able to just have my kids, take my kids, pick my kids up. Nobody else is picking them up, which for the most part, they did do some daycare, but as related to anybody else picking them up
So,
from school, things of that
and
nature, we were there.
I'm not saying, daycare is bad. Don't get me wrong.
No,
I'm
no, no,
just
no, no,
saying,
no.
like,
But there's a
the
crucial
balance.
aspect of it, yeah. Because you think
Yeah.
about
Like,
it, if they're at daycare or school 8 hours and you're at work 8, 9 hours, well, when you get off, there's traffic,
mhm.
or you going by the store to pick up something to cook dinner. By the time you get home, it's 6 o'clock, 6:15. You got to try to cook some dinner, and then you got to try to, help kids with homework, depending on the age of your child. Then they got to get ready for bed. So there's no real family time going on during the week for sure, right?
So you gotta
So,
set
but
that time up.
but you got to make it happen because if not, but if
You
if if,
lose
if
them.
it was a June Cleaver
Mhm.
days, right?
Mhm.
Mom's already there. Kids get out of school 3:30, 4 o'clock. They get home, food's already ready, right? So either dad's getting home early or he's on his way. So by the time they get home, get cleaned up, do homework, da 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 da, we
Mhm.
all sitting down at the table and eating together. People don't really do dining rooms anymore because we ain't sitting down eating together.
Or they all on the phone or whatever.
Eating in their rooms or eating, whatever.
Yeah,
Back in the day, everybody ate at the table. Everybody. We didn't have all these distractions. And
distractions.
so it brings me to this point. We have to be intentional.
Yeah,
We have
yeah,
to be intentional. So, there has to be it's just like now, even with my daughter and I, we go to dinner, we put our phones on do not disturb.
oh, yeah. Yep,
When I'm at
absolutely,
dinner with somebody, unless I have to have it on in the event of emergency or something like that, I have it on do not disturb.
absolutely.
Because if it's not dinging and pinging and going off and lighting up, then and out of sight, out of mind. It's off the table.
I just I just feel like I want to give that person, you're spending time with me.
Undivided attention.
I want to respect you taking the
Yeah.
time to spend it with me. You know,
Yeah.
and I have these ideas in my head, and life will make you a fool all the time. But I think the structure, the core of this is service. No, I read a quote today on it popped up. I can't remember if it was on Facebook. I still hate using Facebook, but where it was like something about, until you've been married, you will never know,
Mhm.
until you face divorce, and all these
Yeah.
things. And it said life will make you a fool or whatever. And I'm like, I don't believe that. I don't believe that because again, I have this manual, 66 books that tells me how I should live. And the reality of it is, if both people adhere
Mhm.
to this manual, like really adhere to it, like let me get over myself, you'll be good. God is not going to allow you to fail. I just really believe that. I really
That's
do
the
believe.
piece. Do we rely on our paraclete? Do we rely on the Holy Spirit so that we're not made a fool of?
That.
Because where it gets us, where it entraps us, is when we don't lean on the Holy Spirit. I was just sharing with a group today. Well, I was doing a video preparing for, and it was about the Philippian strategy. And a lot of that was about being content in whatever state you're in. And not only that, but trusting God for your provision because oftentimes and resting in him for the joy of the Lord in your relationship with him, if that's not there, if those pieces are not there, then you don't trust him for provision, so you're going after other things. You don't have the joy of the Lord because your relationship's not there and you don't feel his presence, right? You don't know that God has you. You don't understand that in the middle of the night when I don't even know it, he's watching over me. He's
Right.
keeping me. He's protecting me, and you don't rest in that. So the joy of the Lord is just not there. And it's not your strength because you don't know that you don't rely on
Right.
it. So that's where life makes a fool out of us when we don't have that component and when we don't rely on the guidance and the path that God has so laid out for us. And so that's where it gets us. And then that's when we have to go back and we have to figure out, okay, what am I not doing?
Right.
Why is it that I'm not trusting God? What is it that I don't believe? Because often it's something you don't believe about yourself, or you're believing that you're the person that needs to be the
That's
provider.
right. That needs to make it happen. And that's
Yeah, it needs to
that's
make it
kind of my
happen.
go-to. One of the things I said, and I don't know, I say stuff sometimes, and if I learn differently later, I'll own it. But
Yeah.
there's always this debate nowadays when it comes to like working and women want their careers and all this stuff. But in
Mm-hmm.
my mind, not but, excuse me, and in my mind, as I think about that, I think it's great. It's kind of hard nowadays to live outside of a two-income household, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I always think about this though. I go back to the beginning. PD talks
Mm-hmm.
about go back to where something is first mentioned.
Yeah.
So my wife could be making $600,000 a year,
Mm-hmm.
and it comes down to it, and say, we have a child, and the child is sick, and somebody has to stay home. A lot of people will say, well, she's making more money, it makes more sense. That's a good argument. I just go back to whose curse is it to work again? I just like our curse
Well, here's the thing. Here's the thing. It's all about, in those kinds of scenarios, it's what are we used to? What have we
Right,
become accustomed to? And how have we been become accustomed to living? Because it's not that you can't live, you can.
right.
You just there are going to be some sacrifices that you'll need to make. And
Are
is
you
it worth
willing?
it?
Yeah.
Are you willing to make the sacrifices? It's just like right now. I prefer not to have to do what I'm doing, not work grind and work as hard as I do.
Mm,
But you do what you have to do.
to do
So
it.
some of us as women are in the position we are because that's where we are.
Mhm.
And that's the hand we're playing right now, right? So you do what you have to do, but then there's some of us who are in a position where we have that help, we have that helpmate, we have that covering, and we don't have to, and we still do. Though that's when I question
Right.
why. What's
Why?
behind that? Because
Right.
trust you me, I know how to let a man be a man. One come up in here, God present one. Come on, bruh.
Yeah.
Come on, bruh. Do what
Hey.
you do. I got you. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I got you a bath drone in the evening. I got you. We good.
And so these are the conversations that I think make people uncomfortable. And I get told all the time, Jamal, you're shallow or you're a chauvinist. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm not trying to
Mhm.
say a woman needs to be at home cooking and cleaning. I'm just trying to say, let's think about what we are putting up on this pedestal, what our faith and our trust is in. You could be working, yeah, you could have a $600,000 a year or whatever, but that doesn't define your life. That doesn't give. Job had everything.
Mhm. Any wise woman, of course, I'm in a different range of age,
Mhm.
so I'm sure there are young women who would totally disagree with me. But any wise woman would prefer to take care of her husband, make sure that everything that he needs is there, and be the Proverbs 31 woman and make sure that whatever that house has, whatever that budget is, that you make sure that you maintain that, keep up with that and all of that, so that whatever income is coming in or monies is coming in, and even if she is working or working part-time, for
Right.
instance, if
Yeah.
if I had a spouse who was working outside the home or even had his own business, that gives me the opportunity to be a part of that vision, but also do what I do. We do it together, and then we manage the time we need for each other. So we don't have to figure out two different schedules. We make our own, right?
Right.
Because we have that balance and we have that opportunity because I'm not bound to the same, you know, um, structure and calendar and all of that.
Mhm.
He might be. So then
Right.
we can work with one schedule. And
Right.
I just acquiesce to whatever's available based on his schedule. That way it's not hard. So if he's got weekends off, okay, bam, weekend trips,
So let me
brunches,
ask you
whatever the
this:
case may be.
what if, and this question is always gonna come, what if the woman has the schedule and all this stuff, and how does that work in the flip side?
There has to be conversation. There has to be an understanding. And
Thank
so
you.
when you come together and realize that you are one, so it may be, the husband may be a salesman, or it may be something.
Mm,
His work is work from home, but at the end of the day, he's making it happen. So she don't have to work overtime. She don't have
right.
to take extra shifts. She do her shift and she done, right? Because he's handling it from a different perspective. But however the tables are turned, you need to make sure that you have the conversation so the balance is
Yes.
there, and you figure
Yes.
out when the time is set for you to have the time for the both of you to nurture and continue to grow and develop your relationship. That's so key. And that's why for me,
Uh-huh.
I'm very particular in this season. And I mean, if I want to just have somebody, I can have somebody, but I ain't just
Right.
trying to be with somebody just to
Right.
be with somebody. That needs to be
Exactly.
purpose.
Yeah.
That needs to be a purpose partner. We need to be going in a direction together. He needs to be a man of vision, right?
Mhm.
And that's not saying that you got to be a millionaire, but we could become
Mhm.
one together,
Right. Right.
right?
So I think um, we have become intoxicated with the world's definition of success,
Yeah.
right? Everybody wants the big house. They want their name on the door, CEO. When you look at most of the CEOs in the world,
Hmm.
they are lonely, and
Often.
most of them aren't married. They're divorced,
Yep.
and paying a lot of money to somebody for
Alimony or
free,
child
right?
support, whichever one.
And even if they are with somebody, you can tell, like you look at it and it's like y'all aren't happy together, right? And
Hmm.
and there are some very successful people I look at and I can see the God in them,
Mhm.
and how well they're thriving. We think success is the big job with the big money. And no, I can never be a millionaire and live a joyful, successful, fulfilled life. My kids have a meal to eat. You know what I'm saying? They have something
Mhm.
left for them when the good Lord takes me home. I think
Mhm.
the problem is we have become intoxicated with this excess. That's what people are
Mhm.
chasing. Excess. I
Mhm.
want red
Mhm.
bottoms. I want this house here. I want that
Greed,
house here.
greed, greed,
Multiple.
and
That ain't
yeah,
God.
yeah,
So
trying to look the part, the spiritual front and the corporate front. You know,
stop.
we want to be big when little got us in a headlock and a
Right.
chokehold.
It's interesting because it's like, yeah, I got it all. You got, you know, I'm picking on the ladies right now. There's a reason, right? I'm the CEO. I'm this. You got the car, you got the clothes, you got all this, you got that. And then like I meet you and I'm talking to you, and the bags under your eyes are like this because
Yeah,
you can't rest.
yeah,
Your hair falling out. You got to put in extensions because you are not resting. That is
mm,
not success.
absolutely,
You are
absolutely,
depleting.
yep,
Fine
absolutely.
china. You using fine china and putting it in the what's it called? The dishwasher. By the way, you can't
Mhm.
do that. I learned that. I don't have china. You know what I'm saying? You're putting china in the dishwasher.
Mhm.
You are fine china. And I didn't come up with that. God said that,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah,
we have to change. Excess does not mean success. And it also doesn't mean that you're happier.
absolutely. Absolutely it does not. I'm telling you, because when I tell you so many people, leaders who are broken, or I'm telling you, relationships are not healthy. It's just, oh my God, it's
It's
crazy. And so,
wild.
people see and they say, you got this glow, you just look like you happy, you content. I'm like, I know. And that's what it is about. Because to me, it's not the person that creates this joy for me. It's me being sure about who I am, loving myself, and knowing that I am fearfully and wonderfully made, and God has a purpose and a plan for my life. So whether that be with someone or not, I'm still who I am. I still have a
Yeah.
purpose. I still have work to do, and I still have lives to impact. You know, would I prefer to do that with a partner? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I've learned therewith how to be content
Consent.
in whatever state that I'm in,
So
whether with or without. So, yeah.
John 14:27. Jesus is like, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth, give I unto you. Let not your heart be troubled. And
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this before. My pastor touched
Mhm.
on it. I want to say either Wednesday, 2 Wednesdays ago, or something like that. But I'm a firm believer when people is like, God, I'm praying for peace. He already gave you that.
Mhm.
He told you, my peace I give unto you, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so that's
Oh God,
literally
I was just
through
reading
the
that.
Holy
Oh,
Spirit.
oh,
The Holy Spirit gives you peace, love, joy, fruits of the Spirit. Where does the fruit come from?
oh, here
The
it is.
Spirit.
I'm right here. Well, this is one passage anyway, because this is what helps to get us there. Rejoice in the Lord. This is Philippians 4:4. Rejoice in the Lord always. And again, I say
Again, I say
rejoice. Let your
rejoice.
moderation be known unto
Mhm.
all men. The Lord is at hand. Be careful for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Let your requests be made known unto God. And the peace of God, which passes all understanding, shall keep your hearts and minds through Christ Jesus. Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest,
Honest,
whatever things are just,
just,
whatsoever things are pure,
pure,
whatsoever things are lovely,
lovely,
whatsoever things are of
are of
good
good
report, if
report.
there is any virtue
Virtue,
and if there is
and
any
any
praise,
praise.
think on
Think
these
on these
things.
things.
Mhm. Those things which ye have both learned and
And
received and heard and seen in me, do,
Mhm.
and the God of peace shall be with you. So to
It's
your point, you don't have to pray for it.
you
If
just
you
have
do
to
this,
Yes. You
The
do
peace
these
of
things.
God will be there.
It's a
I'm
formula.
telling you.
God operates in
Oh,
formulas. And
yes.
and it's
Ah,
like
yeah.
it's covenant, right? Like once God says something, it's not like it's not gonna happen. It may not happen the way you think it will happen, but I literally put Philippians 4:8 on my chest
Mm-hmm.
because I
Mm-hmm.
know my struggle is always in my mind. I'm a cognitive person, very
Mm-hmm.
cognitive.
Mm-hmm.
And so peace, man, like, and I kick myself because I have episodes where I get frustrated and it's like, why God, why God? And then I remember that, and then I go back to Job.
Mm-hmm.
If
Mm-hmm.
God never gave Job back everything 2 times the amount he lost, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't change that God is good,
Absolutely.
right? God is
Absolutely.
good regardless. The problem is we want what we want from God.
When we want it and how we want it.
And it's like,
Yes.
Jay, get over yourself. Like, what are you doing? Or you think you should be here by now? Look, I will put it out there again. Swoop, SWOOPE, produced an album. I want to say either earlier this year or later last year at some point. It's called We Go On. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the most powerful songs, he talks about, well, there's like all of them are great, but he talks about
Mm-hmm.
we are grieving the life that we think we should have.
Should be lit. Mm-hmm.
And it's so crazy. And then there's a song called Chasing Ghosts. We're chasing money and still empty. And the
Yep.
I expect the unsaved, the ignorant to do
Mm-hmm.
so. But as Bible believing Christians, there is no excuse.
None. None whatsoever.
Like,
I ask the question all the time, do you believe what you believe? Do we believe what we believe?
listen,
Because we quote scripture, we
all
can,
day.
we can quote it, we sing it and all this stuff all day in and out every Sunday. And then a wind come up and blow a little hard, we down
No.
God. Who told you that everything was gonna be peaches and cream? Life's gonna have some challenges. There gonna be some storms. But he said he'd
Jesus
be
said
with
that.
you always, even until the end.
So the 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 interesting thing, we I always say we have a very warped view of Christianity because it is not going to be peaches and cream and roses, right?
Mm-hmm.
Christianity is an ugly relationship.
Very much so.
It is
Very much so.
ugly, dirty, and messy
It
because
is.
Jesus was bloodied and crawling and
Mhm.
carrying that cross. That is love.
Mhm. And
It's
ooh, that was something I meant to say. What did I do with the book? That's the whole thing, the blood covenant. So it's this has these rings, but there's this
mm,
one where the blood covenant is broken.
mm.
When we break that covenant with God, we have issues. When we're married and we break that covenant because it's a blood covenant, that's where stuff starts to seep in. When that chain gets broken, when that covenant gets broken, that's when things start to seep in. That's when life's able to make a fool out of us. That's when we begin to digress, right? That's when we begin to, have our ear gates open to things that we shouldn't be listening to. Our eye gates, our heart gates are open to things that we should not be open to because we allowed that blood covenant. He shed his blood for us. And when we bow, that's a never ending circle. But when we allow that circle to get broken,
Ooh-wee.
it's a problem.
Mm.
Well, I tell you, this has been yeah, this has been one. This has
Yeah,
been
this
one. I think we have started a conversation that um we definitely have to continue. So I want to
uh-oh,
make sure that yeah, we
we
talk
bring it back.
about yeah, we talk some more about this broken relationship of leaders, and not just spiritual leaders,
Right, right.
corporate leaders, um, people who are blowing their brains out, but they're corporate leaders leading, multi-billion dollar companies, organizations,
Mm.
and relationships are broken. So the money didn't make it happen. The money didn't help you to be the person you needed to be, him or her.
Yeah.
The prestige didn't bring the family together. What's happening? We got to talk about it.
I love it.
All right.
I love it.
Next time we're gonna go into it right here